Okay, Mr. Mayor, we're now live. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I will call the meeting to order. Our land acknowledgement statement. We acknowledge with respect to history, spirituality, and culture of the Anishinaabe people of the three fires known as Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi Nation. We have inhabited this land from time immemorial. And further give thanks to the Chippewa Saugeen and the Chippewa Mawash, now known as the Saugeen Ojibwe Nation, as the traditional keepers of this land. We also recognize the Métis and the Inuit whose ancestors share this land and these waters. May we all, as treaty people, live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship with all its diverse people. Approval of the agenda. Does any council member have anything to add to the agenda here tonight? Seeing none. I have a recommendation here that the agenda be approved as presented. Someone to move to the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pringle, second by Councillor Barfoot. Is there any discussion on the motion before us? Seeing none, a show of hands, all in favor, please. The motion is carried. Declaration of community interest to declare anytime you see fit during the meeting. We're now down to our public hearings. Official plan update. The recommendation is that this report to supplement a special meeting of council scheduled on September 15th, 2021 in relation to Township's official plan review be received, and that the comments received as part of the special meeting of the council be considered in the official plan review process. Someone to move to put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn, second by Deputy Mayor Carlson. We have a guest here tonight from J.L. Richardson and Associates. And Madam Planner, would you please introduce our guest, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening, I'm really happy to introduce Jason Farragon and Garang Kandalwal from J.L. Richardson Associates Limited. We are really excited that we're actually starting on the update to the official plan. And I know that council's excited about that too. So I'm just going to let Jason and Garang get on with the presentation. And obviously there will be an opportunity for questions at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Jen, for that introduction. And I see that Garang is always one step ahead of me and already has the presentation up. So I'll begin by sort of saying on both my behalf and Garang's behalf that we're very pleased to be here with you this evening and to have the opportunity to speak with both council and members of the public about your official plan, which, as council knows, is a varium to guide the future of your community. So the intent of the meeting tonight really is to kind of set the stage for the official plan review that we're going to undertake together in the coming months, and to provide members of the public with an opportunity to share their perspective on land use planning issues in your community so that we can understand those issues early in the process and we can take them into consideration, both as Ms. Burnett and Mayor Burley have indicated as we go through the process together. So Garang, maybe if we can move to the next slide, please. So what we would like to do with you this evening, if it pleases you, of course, is to sort of talk to you about the 6 things that are on this slide. So we're going to begin by talking a little bit about, what is planning as sort of a concept and as an outcome. I certainly know that council understands this, but for members of the public who are here or maybe watching, we'll talk a little bit about Ontario's planning framework, because that's an important contextual piece to understand when thinking about an official plan and thinking about an official plan review program. We're obviously going to then talk about your official plan, and we've had an opportunity to look at it. We think that it's a good document. There are opportunities for improvement, so we'll touch on those based on our preliminary understanding at this point. And then at that stage, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Kandalwal, who'll then talk to you about the scope of the review that we're about to undertake together, the steps and the timing of the review, and then importantly, how we intend to engage your residents and stakeholders and council in this process. We understand from our early research and our conversations with Ms. Burnett that council believes very strongly in good communication with its residents and with its ratepayers, and we believe strongly in those values as well. And so we want to talk to you about the process that we intend to use to ensure that your community is engaged as much as possible in this process and has an opportunity not only to understand the value of the official plan, but to understand the outcomes of this process as well. Greg, if we can go to the next slide, please. So let's begin with the first question. It's always the most difficult question for a planner to answer, which is, what is planning? And I say that in some jest, but also with some seriousness. And when I think about planning, I've been practicing planning now for about 23 years, and I've had the good fortune of working across the province in many different places and for many different levels of government. And when I think about planning, and I talk to my colleagues and others about planning, at one level, planning is both it's a strategic and it's an operational, both a profession and a practice. So on the strategic side, on one hand, the official plan, establishes a vision for your community in the long term and establishes policies to guide decision-making around development and infrastructure to ensure that those decisions are consistent with your vision for the community as a council. So that's one way that planning is strategic. And then on the other hand, planning is very much of an operational profession. It's an operational practice as well. So the Planning Act, as we're going to see in the next slide, provides municipalities with many tools that they can use to manage physical change in their community. Now, council knows this. Planning is very much about balancing sometimes competing interests. So those could be making sure that you're making sustainable decisions, so you're having adequate regard for economic, environmental, or social considerations in your decision making. It is certainly about balancing the interests between, your goals and objectives in a community, the county's goals and objectives, and the province's goals and objectives. And this is certainly something that is going to come into play as we go through the official plan review exercise. And planning is about balancing both public and private interest. And those are two different perspectives sometimes in the planning conversation. And there is often room for that balance. Sometimes there isn't, but often there is. Now, when you look to the definition of planning in our professional, from our professional association, what it says is that planning is very much about managing land resources. I put land and resources here, but the definition is land resources, facilities, services, and matters. So it's a little bit broader than that. So there's definitely an element of managing land use activity. And as an outcome, it decides, where homes are built and where people live, where industry is located and where people go to work. It's about, parks and schools. So not only where they're located, but what they look like, how they function, how they're integrated within the rest of either the neighborhood or the community. And also about how essential public services should be provided. So that could be roads, and I know that you're going through some servicing conversations, so water services, sanitary services, all of those sorts of things. And at the end of the day, what planning is attempting to do, I guess, is shaping and protecting the character of your communities. And at another level, planning is also about influencing other types of outcomes. And I know that council is very much interested in sort of proactively discussing climate change, both climate mitigation and climate change adaptation. So this is one area where planning can help with you achieve those strategic goals, because planning has an influence on both the building and the transportation sector. So through your official plan, you have an opportunity to shape some of your strategic outcomes, I guess, as a council. Greg, we'll go to the next slide, please. So that's what planning is, sort of in a nutshell. And what this slide attempts to do is describe Ontario's planning framework. And as council knows, in Ontario, we operate in what's known as a policy-led system. And what that means essentially is that the province establishes the overall policy direction for land use planning across the province of Ontario. and it establishes the tools that municipalities can use to then achieve their planning outcomes. So what this slide is attempting to convey is sort of the two different levels that come into play here. So at the top of the slide, obviously, we have the Planning Act, which is the primary piece of planning legislation in the province. And what that act says is that when you're making decisions that affect the land use planning matter, you have to have regard to the matters of provincial interest within that act. Now, not only does the act says that, but it also provides municipalities with the tools that creates a consistent playing field for planning across the province. Now, the Act also gives Lieutenant Governor and Council the ability to create the provincial policy statement, which is the bar on the left. And the provincial policy statement is the province's, as its name implies, it's the province's statement about what it cares about in land use planning in Ontario's communities. And under the Act, decisions are required to be consistent with that document. Now, that document includes prescriptive policies and it includes enabling policies. But that, I come back to the concept of balance and creating the balance between your goals and objectives and the province's goals and objectives involves a significant review of those policies to understand how they apply in your community and to understand how you can achieve that consistency through the official plan review program. On the other hand, we have provincial plans, and there's a whole host of provincial plans, and the Niagara Escarpment Plan is the provincial plan which comes into focus when we think about Georgian Bluffs and the work that we're about to do together. So we'll be looking very closely at that document, having many conversations with Ms. Burnett, her colleagues, and at the county and the Niagara Escarpment Commission to ensure that your goals and objectives are consistent with the goals and objectives in that document as well. So that's the provincial side. And then when you get down to the local municipal side, obviously Grey County is your upper tier municipality. They've just recently gone through a very extensive community planning exercise to come up with a new official plan for the county. So a big part of this exercise is going to be to ensure that your document is informed by that upper tier document and complements that and vice versa. And then at the lower tier, we have your official plan. As a council, you also have the ability to create other policy plans, use tools related to zoning. So either your general zoning bylaw, holding bylaws, minor variances, as well as land division to implement the policies that are articulated in your official plan. Graham, we'll go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, and I don't propose to go into a high level of detail here because I know council is very familiar with its official plan. But importantly, sort of on this slide, so your official plan did come into effect in 2014, and that's 6 years ago. And I think as council understands, the world changes pretty fast nowadays, and it seems like change is everywhere and that it's constant. And when you look at your official plan today, it presents a comprehensive series of policies to guide change in your community and complements Grey County's official plan very, very, very well. And I think the opportunity that we have in the coming months working together is to open up that document and to see how we can update it to ensure that it is continue to reflect your goals and objectives as a community and to reflect changes that have occurred in the external environment since the plan came into effect in 2014. So with that, I'll pass it to my colleague, Mr. Kandawal, and Garang will be able to walk us through the scope and the schedule for the official plan review program, and then importantly, how residents and stakeholders can get involved in this process as well. Garang?
Thank you, Mr. Ferrigan. And as Mr. Ferrigan highlighted in the previous slide, so the official plan came into effect in 2014. And since then, the province has made significant updates to the provincial policies and guidelines, including the Planning Act, the Provincial Policy Statement, and the Niagara Escarpment Plan. And as well as the County of Grey official plan came into effect in 2019. The Planning Act requires the council to revise the township official plan no less frequently than 10 years after it comes into effect and as a new official plan and every 5 years thereafter. So there is a need to review and update the official plan at this time. And the purpose of this review is essentially to ensure that the official plan has regard to matters of provincial interest, is consistent with policy statements issued under Section 3 of the Planning Act and conforms to the conforms with the provincial plans or does not conflict with them. It is also an opportunity to ensure that the township official plan continues to reflect the community's visions, goals, and objectives for land use planning. So considering that, the scope of the review for this official plan update involves incorporating 10 previous amendments to the township official plan, having regard to matters of provincial interest as listed in Section 2 of the Planning Act, ensuring consistency with the provincial policy statement 2020, and ensuring conformity with the Niagara Escarpment Plan 2017 and the County of Cray official plan. And also provide new or updated policy for matters which are identified through the review process, and some of which are listed on the slide here. We understand what your communities and councillors' priorities are, and we are excited to learn more on how the community is shaping going forward, particularly in terms of your priorities in terms of housing and climate change, and how that affects land use planning, and how that can be incorporated in this update to the official plan. So the schedule for the project, so the project is divided into 4 phases, background review and study, consultation and analysis, drafting the official plan, and finalizing the official plan. These 4 phases and corresponding tasks in each of these phases have been detailed in our report, and this slide summarizes the timelines with each of these phases. The project is anticipated to end in August of 2022. However, it is to be noted that the final approval authority for this for the official plan is the County of Cray, and final approval will be dependent on county's timelines. We believe that good communication, engagement, and collaboration are central to the success of any land use planning study. And our approach to stakeholder and public engagement reflects that, considering it is based on 7 key principles highlighted on the slide here. So being open and transparent, building trust and confidence, being flexible and responsive to public comments, being iterative to close the loop with the public and stakeholders, being meaningful in policy development, building capacity, understanding, and support for the public and stakeholders through the process, and being well facilitated. And we understand that the township and the council holds similar values, which makes us enthusiastic to be working with and for the township. Our proposed strategy uses a variety of techniques and tools. These techniques and tools have been summarized in the table here and are essentially designed to inform, consult, involve, and collaborate with stakeholders and the public, as well as empower the decision makers. A detailed consultation plan is provided in the appendix of the report, which highlights a proposed communication touchpoints to engage with the public and stakeholders in each of the 4 project phases. So that concludes our presentation. We hope our presentation was able to provide you with an understanding of our approach to the official plan review process. We are happy to take any questions that there may be, and are certainly eager to get feedback from the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your great presentation. Madam Clerk, do you want me to open the floor up to council for questions, or do you want to do your 2 resident guests first?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, I would recommend we go to our public registrants and then open it for council, if council's in agreement to that. So with us this evening, we have 2 members of the public to ask questions regarding the official plan. So to begin, I will invite Ron and Judy Hillston. Please go ahead and submit your comments.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I just unmuted here. It's a learning process for us, so right as a moment, no comments, and we'll have to figure that out later after the.
We did send a letter.
Yeah, so, but nothing to do with this meeting. So, okay, we'll just I'll mute again and we'll carry on. Thank you for the time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Hillston. Next, we have Mr. Ken McPherson. Ken, please go ahead.
At this time, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McPherson. That ends the public registrants we have for this meeting. So, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you for both our registered guests. I'm going to turn the floor over to council now, and I believe Deputy Mayor Carlton, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of comments, one of them being about, it says finalize the plan July to August of 2022. At some point in August of 2022, do we not go possibly lame duck? And how does that affect that finalizing the plan before the next election? And then I have one further thing after that.
Madam Clerk, you care to answer that question?
As council is aware, council is restricted with certain acts following the lame duck period, specifically tied to financial obligations and budgetary impacts. So it would always be my recommendation that large studies such as these be passed outside of a lame duck period. So it would be my recommendation that we aim for at least early August. We have the potential to become lame duck as of, I believe, the third Friday in August.
Does that answer your question, Deputy Mayor? And I'm quite sure that our consultants can, and our panel understands the problem we have, and we'll try and work to that schedule.
Yes, that answers that question. And I guess I just wanted us to really be aware of that we run that risk if we can't keep things moving along with it. My other is about our neighbors to the west, town of South Bruce Peninsula, have recently put together a short-term accommodation bed and breakfast policy. I'm wondering if that will be included in our official plan as well. Is that where this would kind of come to rest, or where does that happen? Thank you.
Go ahead, please. Madam Planner, do you want to answer that, or do you want your guest? Go ahead.
I can answer that. Yeah, the what we would be doing through this process is public consultation. So through the update to the official plan, there would be opportunities for residents to participate. We would consult with them publicly to see, what the issues are when it comes to short-term accommodations. As I had mentioned to council on separate occasions, we don't have a database or complaints logged to identify what the issues are. We have had a couple of properties that have been identified, but we don't have a number of them on which to start. So what we would like to do is reach out to the residents. There are some people who operate short-term accommodations and have never had any issues. And there are some people that use it as additional income. So they need an opportunity to bring forward their concerns and to let us know how their operation functions. And from that, then council would be able to determine if they want to implement a licensing program that may be, similar to or a variation of what South Bruce has decided to do. Jason, I didn't know if you wanted to add to that at all.
Thank you, Jen. So through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, certainly short-term rental accommodation is probably, as I look at the issues that we deal with communities across Ontario, that's probably one of the top three, if not, in the top 3 to 5 range. And I agree with Jen. This is an important opportunity to go out and talk to your community about the issue to get a greater understanding. And then to begin, I'll use the term set the stage, to set the stage through your land use planning policies. Jen is absolutely correct. If you look at a lot of the municipalities, certainly the examples that we're of across Ontario, they're attempting to regulate the industry through a licensing system as opposed to their land use planning policies, because planning is about use versus user. So that raises a whole other set of questions. But as I think about that issue and I think about your community, I also think about your economic objectives. And I think, there is a balance there to be struck between stability and residential character and promoting tourism and sort of tourism activity within your community. So, we're very much looking forward to learning more. We're aware of the example that you raised, Deputy Mayor, and we're looking forward to getting involved in the conversation and helping to give council some good advice on what to do next.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Colburn next, and then Councillor Barber. Go ahead, Councillor Colburn.
Thank you, Chair Burley, and through you to our guests, thank you for that presentation. I guess it's a process question right now for me as a council member. Are you asking for our specific input at this time, or are you just explaining the process and the framework and you'll get to us later? Or are you looking for specific comments tonight?
Well, go ahead, please.
So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So to the councillor, we're always interested to understand what council thinks. So, at the end of the day, from our perspective, the official plan is an important document for you and for your community. And, when you update and approve the changes, those are your policies. And so the intent for tonight from the team's perspective is, we definitely want to know if you have some preliminary feedback that you'd like to share with us, please do. We would rather know it now than know it at the end of the process, if you know what I mean.
Got you. Thank you, Ms. and Chair Burley. If I may then make a few comments. I'm going to rapid fire them here if that's okay, folks.
Yep.
I'm really pleased to see mention of affordable and attainable housing. COVID has made it almost impossible for young people to get into the housing market, and that's a great concern, I think, for many of us. So if we can do something with our official plan to make home ownership more affordable for folks, I would love to see that. I like too that we're considering things other than just economic development, and that there needs to be a balance that you mentioned and specifically keeping our natural assets in mind. Again, with COVID, more and more folks are considering our trails and natural spaces important in providing recreation and well-being to both our visitors and our residents. So I think that's important. You do mention climate change as well, and the impact is great on our property owners, particularly, I'm going to say, the shoreline properties where we see erosion, but also our agricultural industries as well. So I think we need to be strategic in our planning around climate change for today and the future. We have seen more and more frequency of severe weather events, and so our official plan needs to, I think, really examine that carefully. And I was also pleased to hear you say that there'll be some cross-examination of our policies to make sure that we're in line with other authoritative bodies like the Niagara Escarpment Commission. I had short-term rentals on my list as well, but our deputy mayor has covered that. And also parkland dedication. I just wonder if we're implementing this particular strategy in the most effective way and with the proper outcomes in mind. So I suppose that's something to always take a look at. That's it for me. Thank you, Chair Burley.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. And did our recording secretary get all of her points, or do you want the councillor to maybe forward that to her clerk? Okay, thanks, Cal. I see her fingers are going 100 miles an hour, so that's good. Okay, I'm going to go now to Councillor Burford.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. I was making notes as you were speaking. Some of the issues are very near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure the planner has been, and their chief building official and bylaw are getting sick of me harping on some issues. Unfortunately, I feel that we have been reactive instead of proactive. And there are some things that are a real threat to the safety and to our ratepayers' enjoyment of their own property, which should be considered. And I would be happy to sit down with you and discuss some of the issues, as I say, that are near and dear to my heart. I have had complaints from ratepayers. One in particular that is very hesitant on coming forward in fear for her safety. I don't mind picking up the ball and running with it because I hate to see anybody living in their own house that's afraid to let their children outside to play. So I'd be happy to sit down with you. Now, are you going to take counselors, how can I say, not suggestions? There have been complaints made to counselors, so I hope, like, you're going to take those into consideration, not just direct comments from the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. I'm quite sure that our planner and our consultants are taking all your comments in, and we'll definitely look at it. Seeing no other questions, as a mayor of this municipality, I have two quirks that I would hope that our chief planner and their consultants will look at, and one has been brought up about Ontario or affordable housing is an extremely important thing. We discuss it, seems to be every meeting at kind of council level, and it is something that does affect George and Bus, and I hope you can take some real time, see if we can help with that situation. And the other thing I'd like you to really look at is to set up a better communication with our Indigenous people. That's extremely important that we do that, and I really think we've failed that we're not setting up some kind of a better dialogue so we can all work together. As I opened up with my land statement, it says it very clearly that we should try to work better with everybody, all the diverse people in our municipality, and that's one thing I'd really like to see you do in the official plan is to get some kind of real good dialogue going on with our Indigenous people. And that's all I have to say. Is council members, any other council members have any comments? Councillor Coburn, I think I see your hand.
Thank you, Chair Burley, and thank you for that reminder. I appreciate your comments about our Indigenous people in our area. I don't know if this is the right forum for this, but I will throw in that I think we do need to look at more diversity and inclusiveness, just more broadly in terms of how we go about business here. And it would be, if it makes sense to have that component added to it as well, if it's not already, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. See no other questions from council members. I want to thank our guests for coming here tonight presenting, and our chief planner. It's a very important topic in our municipality planning, although I give the planner all the time, it is. So I'll say thank you to everybody, and I'll move on to our agenda.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So moving on, we're down to delegations, and Madam Clerk, Mr. Davison is up. So please bring him on.
Mr. Davidson, you now have the floor. Please go ahead.
Am I on?
Yes, you are, Keith.
Your Worship, I'm not comfortable with the screen. I can't see who I'm talking to. I can see Councillor Coburn and Deputy Mayor Sue Carlton, but shouldn't I see everybody?
You should, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Mr. Davidson, we do have our cameras enabled. It may be that your bandwidth is not supporting multiple video feeds, but we do have our cameras enabled for you.
Well, I'll just carry on. I respect Councillor Coburn and Deputy Mayor Carlton, so I'll be looking at their faces. And so, good evening, Your Worship, and Deputy Mayor Carlton, and council and staff. And I want to apologize for not being here for a month ago when the staff brought down the report about the Kemble Arena. I wanted in the worst way to be there to make comments, but we had a family crisis and I couldn't make it. So I got a little bit of a preamble, and a lot of it relates to recreation. And I'd like, if you'd give me a little slack, it'll only take me a minute. I want to congratulate Brittany, Madam Acting CAO, regarding the opening of council. When the mayor read that tonight, that was beautiful, especially the last sentence. I love that. And I want to say to our operations manager and to the council that I think he's a keeper. I met him through the phone. We've had lots of conversations, and I like him. And I like the way he's put in the new flagpoles that I've been pushing for a few years. And next year, I'd like him to put the Canadian flag on a pole. Like, that's what I really want to see. And we got lots of Georgian Bluff signs. And if we can get some Canadian flags on new poles, it will be magnificent in all our parks. And to operations manager, I'd like to present him with this flag tonight, the Canadian flag. When some of them get a little faded, he can use it. He can pick it up in my mailbox at the back. And I also like that he's going to repair the Centennial Park Road for $200,000. And I hope it doesn't take away from the ambience of the park, but I think he knows what he's doing. And I like that he's going to put a big bay dock giant flagpole. I can't wait to see that. It's going to be like the one in Southampton. And the planters, he's working on the planters that disappeared in the storm at Centennial Park. I've had to put sap pails and apple boxes and get creative for the planters. And so I just wanted to give him a pat in the back. I don't agree with all the things he said in his report, but anyway, and Mr. CAO Al Mensis, leaving after 8 months, his mantra was citizen engagement with ratepayers. And he told me he was going to engage with me, but it never happened. I want to discuss my left out document regarding the Recreation and Trails Master Plan. For the last 2.5 years, we have had 6 CAOs. One was released, one stayed 1 month, and one stayed 8 months. We've had 3 permanent and 3 acting. The headhunter firm Georgian Bluffs hired have 2 strikes against them. In the search for a new CAO, I think the wives of the top 2 or 3 candidates should be interviewed. If the wives are only lukewarm to moving to Georgian Bluffs, a red flag should go up. In my house, I just think I'm the boss. If the prospective CAO's wives are not happy up here, their husbands won't last with us. Better still, this time around, I say hire a woman as our CAO, all things being equal, and get her to commit to at least 3 to 5 years. And another thing, we've got lots of money in reserves. Why don't we buy a house at Cobble Beach and use it for the CAO? Use it as a perk, and let them come up and use it for 5 years. 5 years would be, or 7 years would be just perfect to have our CAO up here. What might help? And I throw those comments in. Okay, now to the issue at hand. The Kemble Arena going to be refitted because of grants from the feds and province. We don't need a retrofit on our old barn of an arena that is seldom used. We need a new community family center, a community hall. You heard me say that in my last address to council. In 2019, a mistake was made, in my opinion, when the application was sent into the Invest in Canada funding for grant monies. Georgian Bluffs picked the wrong stream, and now we have to retrofit instead of building a new center with plenty of parking. I'm appealing to you and asking the mayor and council to make a direct appeal to our MP and MPP to change our application and tell them we made a mistake, and will they contact their ministers in charge and ask if we can have special dispensation to go from a retrofit of our old Rust Bucket Arena to a new build at the Kemble Athletic Field. At my request, I talked to Bill Walker, our MPP, and I asked Bill if he would contact the Interior Recreation Minister in London if we could. And she said to tell Keith it was an unusual request, but both governments would have to agree, feds and provincial, but the door was still open a bit. It would have to be a direct request, politicians to politicians, and yes, going over the heads of the bureaucrats to make things happen. And in the Kemble Arena report, of August 11th, it talks about breaking the arena down into smaller rooms and larger rooms. We don't need smaller rinky-dink rooms. Even there, Mr. Menace has talked about that, and I don't get it. We don't need all kinds of rooms. We need one big, beautiful, multi-purpose room that is aesthetically pleasing and practical, and with a sprung floor suitable for dances, wedding receptions, concerts, shows. Those are the big things that are going to make this a beautiful facility, not little wee rooms. And in that big room, you can play pickleball, low-level badminton, but just bear with me for a sec. But on an ordinary weekday afternoon, picture a weekday afternoon, you can still have people playing euchre in one corner. Mr. Menace has wanted a special little room for euchre players. No, you can have people playing euchre in one corner, a quilting group in another corner, a couple of shuffleboard or carpet bowling courts going on in the middle of the floor, and you can even have people playing darts on a couple of the recessed dart boards along one of the walls. We need a nice big community hall, not rinky-dink rooms. We already have enough of them in our old barn. The report makes a big thing about having to give the arena property back to the original owners. Why not? Give it back to them. It's the right thing to do. And the reference to the nearby residents forced to travel 20 kilometers to use a similar facility, that's baloney. They don't use the old barn anyway. And if a new hall is built, they just go down the road to the Kimball Athletic Field. Steve, our operations manager, says the Investing in Canada infrastructure program won't allow us to make changes to the renovation category that Georgian Bluffs applied for. We should have applied under the multi-purpose category if we wanted a new build. That is why I think Georgian Bluffs Council should go political and go over the heads of the bureaucrats and get our MP and MPP involved with the appropriate ministers and get them to let us build a new community hall, because we made a mistake and picked out the wrong stream in the original application. Everybody makes mistakes. Retrofitting our old barn of an arena means make a new. How do you make a silk purse out of a sow's ear? We deserve better. We should be going forward with a Field of Dreams hall at the Kimball Athletic Fields, where there is plenty of parking and all the other amenities. Build it and they will come for sure. It will be a much used recreation facility for all ages, all abilities, all interests. Shakespeare said in one of his plays, above all else, be true unto thine own self. That is what I am doing this afternoon, being true to myself, and once again asking that you ask some questions to the feds and province. Only this time, have you, our politicians, doing the asking, not the bureaucrats. Politicians in Georgian Bluffs, like our mayor, or the deputy mayor, or a special committee of council, talk directly to our MP and MPP, and then if they are receptive, to talk to the ministers in the Canada infrastructure files to see if we can put our application in the right stream in order for us to get a new build community hall that we deserve. And finally, to Mr. Menace, our CAO, happy trails down in Norfolk County, Mr. Menace. Too bad you and I could not have met eyeball to eyeball around the table to discuss the 16 proposals I made the recent Recreation and Trails Master Plan. In my left out document, I presented to council and to you December 30th, 2020. I think some good things could have come out of our deliberations when we engagement with your citizens, like you're always talking about. All the best, Mr. Menace. Soin je va. That's it, Your Worship.
Thank you, Keith, for your statements. Mr. Menace, any comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the delegate. I'm going to defer to Steve to make some comments. I will say that this wasn't a decision that was taken lightly. We did explore all options, as Mr. Davidson had asked that we do. We don't believe there was any other option but to proceed with the application. If we were to
attempt to try to, I don't want to say pull a fast one, but if we did attempt to divert in our path instead of retrofitting the facility and try to use the money for a new facility, we would not have been able to do so. Council has made a decision on this particular topic already, and the work is in progress in terms of moving this along. And I'm going to defer to Steve, and he can certainly give committee an update.
Thank you, Al. Steve, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Committee of the Whole members today. We are currently in the process of doing the RFP. It will be hitting the streets in the next couple of days or so to proceed with the next steps as was outlined in the report to Council. Council did sign the bylaw to accept the grant money for the restoration works to the Kemble Arena. There has been some communications, like the CAO has said, to the federal and provincial levels. They said we cannot move the money around. We applied for a certain stream. That's the stream you have to stay within. So we are going to continue with the process, and then another report will be coming to Council after the RFP comes back from being out in the public for Council to review, and then proceed with next steps after that.
Thank you, Steve. Those committee members have any comments or questions? See none. I want to thank you, Mr. Davison, for your presentation here tonight, and all your great comments towards our CEO and staff. Anyway, thank you for your presentation. So I'll move on to our agenda, Madam Clerk. We're down to correspondence. Our first correspondence has to do with the JSS services. Recommendation is that the midterm update from James Special Service be received. Someone to move and put on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Pengel, second by Councillor Colburn. Madam Clerk, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So JSS has forwarded this report for Council's information this evening, simply as a midterm update as to their progress throughout the community thus far. As Council or Committee will recall, we have been partnered with JSS since July 1st of this year to provide bylaw enforcement services on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays from 12 p.m. through to 12 a.m. Residents of the township are encouraged to contact JSS on those days by calling the township office and being auto-forwarded to their dispatch service upon submission of a complaint. So JSS has prepared this midterm update for Council this evening. We simply present it for information. Pending or upon conclusion of the servicing contract on October 31st, staff will present a more detailed version of the statistics you see in front of you, along with options for long-term bylaw enforcement planning. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I will note we also have our bylaw enforcement officer / chief building official, Tim Lewis, with us, should Council have any questions of him as well.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Good report. Does the Council have any questions on this report for information in front of us? Go ahead, Councillor Bartlett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the report, Brittany. I appreciated it. I noticed in the report, and it's good if they're not doing anything to assist the OPP. What struck me as funny, we just reached an agreement with the OPP that, so I understand, that they were going to increase their coverage on the weekends, wasn't it?
For one weekend, Councillor Bartlett.
One weekend, okay. I'm guessing JSS, they're doing this on a voluntary basis. They have not been asked by the OPP to assist them at an accident scene.
Madam Clerk.
The reason I'm asking that is because volunteer fire department also attends accidents and assists.
Sorry, Councillor Bartlett, we're just having a mic problem here. Just
We're having a what?
mic problem. They're trying to get a mic going so they can answer your questions. Sorry.
I'm having a sight problem. If
Yeah.
we're going to use that screen for any public meetings, we're gonna have to do something about the clarity of it.
And Chris,
I'm off, so.
Okay, apologies. So, please forgive me. I will sit here and answer these questions until we can deal with the mic problems in chambers. So in response to the first question being the OPP, it's my understanding that JSS and the OPP have a mutually beneficial relationship, and that the OPP assists JSS and that JSS does the same, vice versa. So I have heard from our police services board, specifically the detachment commander, that they have a positive working relationship and therefore support each other while they're both on duty. And I apologize if I missed any other questions.
that's correct, Madam Clerk. We did have that conversation at our police service board meeting, and the commander, Deborah Anderson, was quite adamant that they like working with GSS.
Who was at that conversation?
We at the police service board with our commander, Deborah Anderson.
Okay.
The reason being is that they started a relationship with GSS over in South Towards Clemson, since they do the same thing over
Oh,
there.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that information, or I wouldn't have asked the question.
No, it's a good question. Good question.
My other question was, I understand they enforce our bylaws and that. Do we not have a bylaw against unlicensed vehicles?
I believe we do, Councillor, Madam Clerk.
Okay, might I advise council, there's been an unlicensed cube van drove off the highway in at the west end of Shallow Lake that has been there all summer. Now, I'm only a counselor, but if you want me to go and get the license number that's on the license plate in the windshield, I'll go and get it. While I'm there, I could probably get the VIN number and somebody could respond to it.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I will respond on behalf of our bylaw enforcement department. And Mr. Lewis, if you have any comments, please feel free to supplement. Councillor Barfoot, thank you for bringing it up. We are aware of the situation. We are aware that it is parked on private property, and our bylaw enforcement officials have notified the property owners to please remove it. Tim, do you have any further comments?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to council and Councillor Barfoot. That particular vehicle, we put a property standards order on the property to have the vehicle removed. That was delivered today. So they have 14 days to either appeal or remove the vehicle. And we just have to wait till the 29th for that to come around. So.
Thank you, Tim. Councillor Barfoot, did that answer your question?
Well, I will say that the people of Shallow Lake are just thrilled that it's been there all summer. It's a good advertisement as you're going into Shallow Lake. We got to keep on top of these things. It's a bit of a joke, and I know that everybody is really busy, but we got to start being more proactive instead of reactive.
Thank you, Councillor Barfoot. Councillor Coburn, I believe I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair Burley. And I just wanted to say that I appreciated getting this report with these preliminary statistics. The number of inspections looks fairly impressive to me. And not much wonder, you know, our own staff in bylaw enforcement have been overworked and overwhelmed for so long. There's a lot. I also appreciated seeing what some of the trends were in this chart, and I think that's interesting to note the troublesome spots that have been outlined for us. I also just wanted to say that I appreciate the recommendation for beefing up or creating some new bylaws, including some nuisance bylaws and a smoking bylaw. So I'm hoping we can get to work on some of those down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn. If there's no other questions, I'll ask for, Tim, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to comment on, beefing up and changing the bylaws. We are in the process of doing that. It's not a thing that you want to rush at. We have a number of things that will be coming forward this evening. We have our building bylaw, and then we're going to start moving on some of the other things. So we are working at it. Okay, it's just that you're dealing with legal matters and legal issues, and sometimes waiting for opinions and stuff takes a little bit of time.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Appreciate the comments. So there's no other comments from council. I'm going to ask all those in favor of the motion before us, a show of hands, please. Opposed? The motion is carried. Madam Clerk, has Councillor Thompson, is he on board yet?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I have tried to go on camera, but I keep losing my connection. So I tried to get my hand up there to vote in favor, but I wasn't fast enough.
Okay. I cannot see you, Councillor Thompson, so please speak up if we're going to have a vote, since I can't see your camera. Okay, so
Thank you.
I'll move on to the agenda. Then we're down to staff reports. The first staff report is from operations. The recommendation is that report OPS 2021-13 regarding on-assumed township road construction minimum standards be received, and that policy OPS 2021-01 being the assumption of roadway minimum standard policy be approved, and that a bylaw to adopt policy OPS 2021-01 assumption of roadway minimum standards be presented for enactment at the October 13th, 2021 meeting of council. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Colburn. Councillor Thompson, you want to second that motion?
Also move, or also second, yes.
Okay. I'm going to turn the floor over to our Director of Operations, Mr. Dolmer. Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Committee of the Whole today. I just thought I'd bring forward this staff report on a policy for minimum standards for construction of new municipal roads and or upgrading or reconstructing of existing municipal roads within the township of Georgian Bluffs. Additionally, this policy will also set guidelines for the use of unopened road allowances, seasonal roads, and private cottage roads that we're looking to assume down the road. So there's roads there that we do get compliments on for to start looking at assumption processes of private roads and that, and we need to bring them up to a municipal standard. So this policy will allow us to ensure consistency in the construction of new and upgrade and reconstruction of existing municipal roads, to ensure adherence to the official plan, to ensure that proponents build new municipal roads to a minimum standards. We're also looking at avoiding passing on any new development costs to ratepayers of the municipality, and then we're also ensure that proponents upgrading existing seasonal or private roads to municipal roads abide by the minimum standards, as this applies to a lot of our roads that we are looking to reopen down the road, or if people are looking to petition to have the road open and stuff like that. So this policy is something that's been on council's wish list for a while, so we're presenting it today. So hopefully, if there's any questions, I'm here to ask them or answer them as required.
Thank you, Steve. Great report. It's been a long time coming. Does council have any questions of our Director of Operations or the report? Councillor Thompson, speak up if you have any comments, please.
No comments. I'll put my hand up if I have a comment too.
Okay, Madam Clerk, can you see us? Yeah, okay, sorry. I cannot see your hand, but okay, that's fine. So we know comments. It's great to see that report coming, Mr. Belmarth. Thank you very much for it. It's a good start. If there's no other comments, I'll ask for a vote on the motion before us. A show of hands, all in favor. And Mr. Tom. Four. Thank you. So we're moving on with our agenda. The recommendation is that report OPS 2021-45 Finden Street on open road allowance update be received, and whereas committee as a whole by recommendation COW 2021-31 require that 60% of property owners be in support of opening of the Finden Street on open road allowance to proceed with a request for quotes process, and whereas less than 60% of property owners indicate their support for opening of said road allowance. Now therefore, staff are hereby directed to notify property owners that Finden Street road allowance will remain unopened. Someone to move to put the motion on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Pringle. Mr. Dolmar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Committee of the Whole members today. Just bringing an update back to you, Committee of the Whole, on the Finden Street unopened right-of-way. We did have a request to look at opening it up for residents that have properties along that unopened road right-of-way. Right now, the surveys came back. We didn't get the 60% as required as our policy was outlined. So at this moment in time, we are not proceeding with the next steps within that study. So we didn't get the residents to get the turnout that was required to move to the next steps.
Thank you, Steve. Does council have any questions on this motion before us? See none? I'll ask for vote on the motion, please, and show of hands all in favor.
4.
Thank you. The motion was carried. Our next report is purchase of vehicle attachments. The recommendation is that the council hereby approve the awarding of the following tenders. 1. RFT 2021-16 supply and installation of quick attached plate, material bucket, forks for cat backhoe model 420E to Battlefield equipment at the tender price of $14,686, exclusive of HST, and for an AMI plate LDF 50 QCMC bucket, LP F50 GP 150LBBOE, and forks LB 50 PF 60C. 2. RFP 2021-17 supply of sweeper for 2019 case backhoe model 590N to Strong Co Limited at the tender price of $15,850, exclusive of HST, for the and HLA LABRB 96BO 500, and include in the 2021 capital budget that was included in the 2021 capital budget. And whereas RFP 2021-15 for the supply and installation of a 1 new single drum fully enclosed grader packer received no submissions. Council hereby waives the procurement policy and sole source item from Nielsen Custom Metal Works Incorporated at a quote price of $22,500, exclusive of HST. Someone to move to put the motion on the floor, please. Moved by Deputy Mayor Carlton, second by Councillor Thompson. Mr. Gallmer, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Committee of the Whole members tonight. Yeah, we're looking to purchase some attachments for existing equipment that we have within the township, instead of us buying certain pieces of equipment that, would just kind of sit there and not be utilizing the current equipment that we have. So the roller will be attached to our existing Volo grader, because the cat grader already has a roller that was included in the purchase price when you guys originally bought it. So this will be helping us with our gravel roads instead of us renting a roller down the road to do maintenance on trails and stuff like that. So this will be an asset that we use quite a bit through our gravel program. The case backhoe street sweeper is going to help us with street sweeping roads a little bit sooner than what we normally would do after a winter season. Then also do basic maintenance as well. So then we can kind of pick it up. So the dust complaints are staying down. We pick up the material and then dump it into one of our trucks. And then the other the two attachments are just quick coupler that allows us to change attachments on the backhoe. So it's a little bit more streamlined than versus trying to physically take bolts off to re-bolt attach stuff. So these are just some attachments that were included in the 2021 budget.
Thank you, Steve. Does council have any questions? Councilor Barber, go ahead.
That's good. And yes, I'm in favor of it. I was just curious, when we purchased the new grader a couple of years ago, there was a roller packer on it. Was it priced out separately, Steve?
From what I got through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councilor Barfoot, what I gathered when looking into it, it was part of the package when you guys went for that the purchase of the grader. The roller was included in that purchase, so this would be an extra off of for the other grader that never came with it.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, I'll ask for a vote on the motion before us. Show of hands, please. All in favor?
4.
Sound like you're calling the cattle, Councilor Thompson. Motion was carried. Okay, I'm down to billing. A recommendation here that report CBO 2021-04 building bylaw be received, and that all previous bylaw governing and regulating building department optional procedures be repealed, and that the draft building bylaw as appended to this report be approved, and that a bylaw to adopt the draft building bylaw be presented for enactment at October 6, 2021 meeting of council. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councilor Pringle, second by Councilor Barfoot. Mr. Lewis, I'll turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to council, we are following through, as we mentioned earlier, still working through our bylaws. It seemed prudent to revise our building bylaw so that we could hopefully be a little more efficient in dealing with violations under the Building Code and the Building Code Act. And hopefully that will translate into some savings on legal fees, because the changes have enabled us to introduce short form wordings, and we can issue an offense notice right on site without having to without having to involve the lawyers or legal action with the court, and it'll speed up the process. We've also taken advantage of getting into our grading and making sure our lots are properly graded. So we'll be explaining that as we go through the bylaw. The existing bylaw 28/2011 is 10 years old and obviously requires updating so it meets current legislation, departmental needs, challenges in dealing with property owners, building without a permit, Building Code Act violations, as I've already stated, and update the bylaw for committee's consideration. One of the main concerns of the existing bylaw is that it does not provide short form wordings to lay fines. When we catch people building without a permit or they're violating the act. Without short form wordings, this leads to having to follow the court process for all building code violations, which can bear a high legal cost to the municipality. The existing bylaw does not speak to the requirements for lot grading and drainage for new buildings, and we've had a lot of issues in the municipality with that. This is not going to solve all the issues. It's not intended to do that. This is strictly a tool for the building department. Most of the buildings that we deal with that are new residential homes are on like 10 acres or under. We did do some, inquiries with local engineering firms and with the legal departments, and they felt 10 acres was a reasonable cutoff point. So that's what we went with. You can move on there, Britt, please. The building bylaw department has performed the necessary research and drafted a new bylaw informed by benchmarking with surrounding municipalities and provincial legislation included in said benchmarking. Township staff work collaboratively with the town of Minto, using their current building bylaw as a template and reviewing their existing procedures for implementation where applicable within the township. The new bylaw maintains the contents and intent of the existing building bylaw, so you won't see a whole lot of changes except for the 2 areas that I mentioned. The new bylaw maintains the content and intent of the existing building bylaw while adding new provisions for lot grading, drainage deposits, and short form wordings, which will be explained in further detail below. The new bylaw will provide for more realistic options in considering fines for those found in contravention of the Building Code Act within the township. This is achieved by outlining short form wordings in Schedule C of the draft bylaws highlighted in the following slides. This will not kick in right away. We have to send these short form wordings to the Chief Justice for approval, but we have everything in place to get that done. So this is just outlining what the short form wordings are and what the fines are. And these have already been approved for other municipalities, so we're not reinventing the wheel here. The Chief Justice, when he reviews this, should be familiar with the wordings, and he should find the fines reasonable because they're in line with what's done in other municipalities. And that, yeah, okay. Furthermore, staff has also reviewed the lot grading and drainage requirements with respect to new development within the township. Recent increase in complaints regarding developments which had occurred in the past where no provisions for lot grading and drainage were implemented have led staff to the below proposed provisions to attempt to mitigate these issues. Concerns in the future, staff proposes the following provisions to be added to the draft building bylaw, which outlines the process and importance of grading and drainage plans for all new development. By putting it in the bylaw, it will also make the builders and the public aware that we're expecting this. We can ask for this without going this route, but this way, the public is being made aware that, as part of our building process, we're going to be looking for this. A lot grading and drainage deposit in the amount of $2,000 shall be required where the estimated building cost exceeds $50,000 on a lot where no lot grading or drainage deposits are prescribed under a separate agreement or bylaw are collected. The deposit shall be 100% refundable upon the submission of a lot grading and drainage certificate and final grading and drainage plan completed by a professional engineer registered in the province of Ontario or an Ontario land surveyor, stating that the grading and drainage has been completed in general conformance with the design grading and drainage plan, accompanied by a final grading and drainage plan indicating the final site elevations. And until the operations department confirms that no impacts to the municipal infrastructure has occurred, which has not been repaired at the sole cost of the owner or contractor, to the satisfaction of the township of Georgian Bluffs. In the event that an unapproved deviance to the site grading and drainage design plan or impacts to the municipality infrastructure has occurred and are not rectified, the cost to rectify the deficiencies will be applied against the lot and grading drainage deposit, with the balance being refunded. If the cost to repair the deficiency exceeds the amount retained and are not paid at the time the remedial work will be completed, the Township of Georgian Bluffs shall have a priority lien status on the subject property as described in Section 1 of the Municipal Act, and they'll be able to collect those expenses. With respect to building construction projects where no deposit is required to be submitted and lot grading and drainage deficiencies or impacts to the municipal infrastructure occur and is not repaired or remediated to the satisfaction of the Township of Georgian Bluffs, the cost of remedial work shall be a priority lien again, and we can collect it through the Municipal Act. Properties over 10 acres in size will be considered exempt from the lot and grading and drainage plan requirement, provided that the property owner acknowledges the requirements of the township's property standards bylaw in effect at the time of the building permit issuance. Acknowledgement must be provided to the chief building official in writing prior to the building permit being issued. We will do a form letter for that. The chief building official reserves the right to request an engineered lot and drainage plan in situations where it is deemed necessary. In cases where there are irregularly shaped lots or where the proposed development will be within a close proximity to existing development. Financial impact, the new building bylaw will not impose any financial impact to the township or the ratepayers. At this time, no permit fee amendments are being proposed. It is anticipated that in clarifying regulations regarding building permits via the proposed new bylaw, staff time spent explaining building permit requirements and pursuing legal prosecutions under the Building Code Act violations through the court system will decrease, therefore resulting in staff resource savings through the use of short form wordings and future building code violation matters. Legal costs to the township and prosecuting such matters should be significantly decreased. The recommendation as included in this report achieves the fifth strategic goal, deliver effective and cost-effective services as included in the 2020-2024 Township of Georgian Bus Strategic Plan. And in conclusion, the new building bylaw has been drafted and appended to the report for committee's consideration. It is recommended that committee approve the draft bylaw via approval. Other recommendations contained therein are herein. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Before I turn it over to councillor questions, Madam Clerk, I need to ask you a question. Do we need to update our fees bylaw to match these new fees we're doing, or is billing fees separate from our fees bylaw?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I believe I see our CBO shaking his head, but I would comment that the fees and charges bylaws are updated on an annual basis. So that will be prior to the end of 2021 regardless. And I would turn it over to either our CBO or our treasurer for further comment.
Oh, okay. Who wants to take it, Tim or Cassie? Cassie, you there?
Madam Treasurer, please go ahead.
Yes, sorry about that. So our fines for things are not defined in our fees and charges bylaw. That's in a separate penalty bylaw. So no, we do not need to update our fees and charges bylaw at this time. And as our clerk said, we will be bringing that forward at the end of the year for updating anyway.
Thank you, Cassie. Tim, any comments?
No, it's fine.
Okay, does council have any questions? Councillor Thompson, if you have any questions, please speak up.
No questions, thanks.
Seeing no questions from any council member or no comments, I'll ask for the vote on the motion for us, please. A show of hands, all in favor?
4.
Thank you. The motion is carried. We're now down to public question period. Madam Clerk, has any member of the public registered a question?
No, they have not.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. No unfinished business. We're down to new business. Councilor Barfoot.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you want to consider this unfinished or new. I think the clerk should draft up a bylaw about speaking on the same subject repeatedly.
Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I believe what Councillor Barfoot is referring to is a clause to be added to the procedure bylaw regarding delegations and speaking to the same matter multiple times. If that is a request of council, I can certainly look at incorporating such a clause into the township's procedure bylaw that would require an amending bylaw to the procedural bylaw.
Okay. Is that council's wish?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, for simplicity's sake, I would recommend that should that be Councillor Barfoot's wish, that she present a notice of motion to that effect for consideration on October 6th.
Okay, Councillor Barfoot, go ahead.
If there are if people are here, if we were allowed to have, people were allowed in, we have a bylaw that says you speak on one subject, but he can't speak on the same subject.
I think we understand what you're saying, and Madam Clerk, so we'll prepare that notice of motion by Councilor Barfoot for our next meeting, or October 6th?
Yes, that's correct. I will provide a notice of motion or include a notice of motion to that effect on the October 6th meeting agenda.
My problem is that council has so many meetings, we have so much literature. Staff has so many meetings, so much literature, and I think we've got to get a little more streamlined in this respect. Thank you.
So you will bring that notice of motion forward?
Yes, I will. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
So we are now down to notice of motions, and I believe Councillor Colburn, you have a notice of motion. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Burley. I know we've spoken about this before, but I'd kind of like to make it official just to make sure it does get done probably for the next term of council. And this follows nicely behind Councillor Barfoot's comments about the number of meetings that we have. I would like to make a motion that we implement a different model of committee of adjustment that is made up of citizens rather than members of council. I think it serves a lot of purposes, including engaging the public more actively and collaboratively. I know other municipalities have followed this same kind of a model, and I would be bringing that motion forward to do so as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Colburn. Clerk has so noted. So we're going to go into closed session now. It shouldn't take that long, but we are going to closed session. The recommendation is the council's committee of the whole move into closed session at 6:25 p.m. with the CAO, Director of Finance, Director of Operations, and clerk to discuss 1, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administration tribunals affecting the municipality or local boards. Someone to move to put it on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Pringle. If there's no discussion on the motion, show of hands, all in favor? It's carried.
Or
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So we are now in closed session, so please move out. And back in.
Present.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Committee went into closed session to discuss matters under open meeting exemption E of section 239 of the Municipal Act. No actions were taken as a result of the closed session discussions. At this time, on behalf of myself, council, and all the ratepayers of Jordan Bluffs, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Mr. Menezes for his great service you've given the municipality. Seems like a short time, I think it's 8 or 9 months, and we really appreciate it, all your professionalism and your wisdom. And I can't say you won't be missed, because you will be. And we're honored to have you here for a short time, and thank you for the service of Jordan Bluffs. So I'll move on to the agenda. We are done all our business here today. Our next meeting is October 6th at 5 p.m. If there's no discussion, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Barfoot, second by Councillor Pringle. I will adjourn. A show of hands, please. All in favor of adjournment? And Mr. Thompson, Councillor Thompson?
For.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.